I tried to fit some Danish and Norwegian things inside the shot. I don't know how well I did, but it's the scream, yay! And this one, of course, and this guy. I mean, he is Swedish, but he was married to a Dane, so yeah. Hello and welcome back to my channel. And today we are doing a medieval episode, and we are talking about the medieval queen of Scandinavia, who's Margret or Margrethe or Margareta or Margrethe, depending on where you're from, really. Margret was a lady who knew the political game inside and out, and she could play it very, very well. She was definitely one of the big players during her time. But as we will see, many of her opportunities actually came from her own personal tragedies that she experienced. Today, Margaret the First. Margaret was born a medieval Danish princess, and her father was actually King Valdemar Atterdag, who is mostly remembered today for reunifying Denmark after a period of political turmoil. Also, he occupied the island of Gotland in the Baltic Sea in 1361, kicking off a really big medieval festival. Now, according to a folk tale or a legend, which we might not take that seriously actually, King Valdemar's dream was to conquer the whole of Scandinavia. And he went to a fortune teller who advised him to have some relations with his wife, which he did. And as a result of that, Princess Margaret was born. And Margaret would be the one who actually fulfilled her father's dreams, according to the legend. Now, Princess Margaret was born in 1353, just at the tail end of the bubonic plague, or the Black Death, a devastating epidemic that swept through Europe in the 1350s, and as many as 1/3 or even half of the population of the continent might actually have died as a result of this. And she was born at the end of it. And Margaret became a chess piece in the political game when she was as young as 10 years old, because she was married off to Håkon, who was the king of Norway. Do we have another picture? We don't? Okay, this will do. She was married off to Håkon, who was the king of Norway at the time. And Håkon was the son of Magnus, and Magnus was the king of Sweden. And Håkon also co-reigned Sweden together with Magnus. You see, this is Scandinavia, everyone's related. Okay. Also, Margaret was 10 years old and Håkon was 22 when they got married, and in this cultural region it was standard to wait to consummate the marriage until the bride was at least 15 years old. Make of that what you will. And Margaret was moved into Åkershus in Oslo with Håkon, where they lived, and she was actually educated by the daughter of Saint Bridget at the time. Yeah, very cool. Celebrities. And in 1370, when Margaret was 17 years old, she gave birth to her first and only child, Olaf. No. Thank you, Olaf. And Margaret was busy because not only was she the teenage mother of a new baby, her court had been struck by starvation basically when she was pregnant. There's multiple letters of her complaining about that. And also her father-in-law, King Magnus, had been driven out of Sweden. He had lost his crown in Sweden, been driven out and moved in with her. And that whole thing, it's a big can of worms, and we're not opening that one today because we would be here all day. But important to note is that King Magnus had been replaced by his nephew, Albrekt of Mecklenburg. And Albrekt would from here on be Margaret's greatest competitor and threat and rival, one could say. And now we're kicking off a series of events in which Margaret would really demonstrate her political skills. Because in 1375, her father, King Valdemar, died. And he had no surviving sons. So Margaret, 22-year-old Margaret, picked up her 5-year-old Olaf and traveled to Denmark and made the case to have Olaf be declared the new king of Denmark. And she was very successful. She did it. And this was very important because in Denmark, just like in contemporary Sweden, you elected your king. And normally it was, the oldest son of the present king that would be picked, but there was none really right now, so he had to be elected. And 5 years later, in 1380, her husband, King Håkon of Norway, suddenly died, making Queen Margaret a widow at age 27, as well as her son Olaf, the King of Denmark and Norway, at age 10, with Mummy as its political guardian, of course. And everything went very well until Margaret suffered probably the hardest thing a person can endure, and that was that her son Olaf passed away suddenly in 1387 when he was only 17 years old. And that could basically have been it for Queen Margaret and her political career, because she had built so much upon being the young king's mother. But Margaret acted very quickly and with determination, as she always did, and she actually managed to be declared the ruler of these Olaf's domains, basically. So she received the lovely title Sovereign Lady and Lord and Guardian of the entire Kingdom of Denmark, which basically meant ruler of Denmark indefinitely. And it wasn't long until the sovereign lord, lady, guardian, queen, until the queen was approached by members of the Swedish aristocracy, because many years prior, when they had overthrown her father-in-law, King Magnus, the king of Sweden, and her husband, Håkon, the co-regent, in favor of Albrekt of Mecklenburg, they hadn't really accounted for Albrekt's political ideas. You see, Albrekt was raised in German-speaking Mecklenburg, and when Albrekt came to the throne in Sweden, he tended to favor other German-speaking people, making the Swedish aristocracy who had favored him quite jealous and not very content. Now that Albrekt's biggest champion, the immensely wealthy Bo Jonsson Grip, had died, this is an estimate of that guy's personal land holdings, by the way, Albrekt tried to get control of the will, and through that grow his power. So what did Margaret do? Well, of course she jumped at the chance to retake her husband's lost holdings. A war between Margaret and Albrekt was commenced in 1388. And there's a lot of myths surrounding this war, and if you ever hear that Albrekt would refer to his opponent Margaret as King No Pants, get it? Because she's a lady. She doesn't wear pants, she's a lady. Or that he would have sent her kit with needle and thread because that was more suitable occupation for a woman. You should know that those are not true. He didn't do that. Albrekt did not have that kind of sass, and unfortunately those are myths. Further, he respected Margaret and saw her as an very real and very dangerous opponent.
A cold February day, Margret's troops attacked Albrekt, his son, and soldiers at Åsle. And this was not like one of those huge battles that you see on TV. Margret had about 1,500 men present, and Albrekt's troops might have been around like 1,000. King Albrekt's forces were defeated, and himself as well as his son became high-profile prisoners and were taken to Margret.
And this was a victory that gave Margret an enormous psychological advantage. I mean, she had captured her biggest opponent since 20 years. And a few sources claim that Margret subjected Albrekt to torture when he was imprisoned. And yeah, probably. I mean, the account that states that it's written by one of her political enemies, but there are contemporary medieval historians today that actually claim that, yeah, it could have been very true that she did.
Albrekt still had plenty of supporters in Sweden, though, primary German-speaking communities in bigger towns. In Stockholm, Albrekt's supporters showed that they meant business when they locked Margret's supporters into a house and burned it to the ground.
So, 1389. Margret is declared the queen in these provinces, and she has captured this one. And now she needed something to consolidate her power. She needed dynastic continuity. And dynastic continuity is a concept that historians like to talk about when they want to use big words. And it basically means having an heir to your throne, because otherwise there might be political instability when you die. There will be fighting when you die, basically, if you haven't sorted that out before you die. And Margret, she didn't really want to get married again and have biological children. Instead, she had a relative or a niece that had a child, and then the niece had died. So she named the boy, who was named Bogislav, her prodigy, and she adopted Bogislav, and then she changed his name to Erik, because Erik is this old Scandi king's name, and she thought that that would fly better in Scandinavia. And Erik was crowned the king of Norway in 1392, when he was only 10 years old. And with her new adopted son at her side, Margret set out to start her biggest political project ever, the unification of these three kingdoms. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. That was part 1. There will be a part 2 as well. I felt that it would probably be pretty long, and I'm gonna try to do part 1 and part 2 for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I am super grateful that you took your time, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in part 2. Thank you. Bye.
Next time, Margret unites the three kingdoms. Controversial document. OMG. Who was fake Olaf? Albrekt's return. And Margret's connection to South Park.